All right. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Palantir daily streams once again are happening on this channel. Now, I'm going to talk about why it's happening on this channel and why I'm so happy to be back. I'm going to just tweet this out real quick. Let me make sure it is in the Xverse, Twitterverse, whatever you want to call it. Back live now. And then we'll talk about what we're going to talk about today. I am very happy to be back. I have missed streaming on this channel live on these Palantir streams for the past basically 3 weeks now. It's been a while. The reason I stopped was because Emmanuel, what's up, bro? Thank you for being here. I haven't done a finance junk. Oh, we're going to talk about the shirt. Warren, Miami, Emit. We're talking about the shirt in a second. Because we had finance junkies every night, like 7 p.m., it was really hard to like do another stream right after that on this channel. And so basically I said, okay, well, what if we move the finance junkies to another channel, then boom, you know, I have this channel free for streaming, for doing what I want to do. So now that finance junkies is on another channel, the actual Palantir daily stream that I did, I think 24 episodes of so far. So this is number 25. We'll be back on this channel. In fact, I think the last episode I did was with Jeremy. That was the last episode. So that was that 8th or something like that. We're going to be talking. You know what I also noticed today? By the way, is the Wi-Fi okay? Is the Wi-Fi all right, or is the Wi-Fi a piece of shit? Hold on. Let me check right now. We're back for the first time, so we have to fucking see how the Wi-Fi is. Let me make sure on my phone the Wi-Fi is not trash. No, the Wi-Fi is trash. Okay, give it 2 seconds. I'm going to switch the Wi-Fi. It's going to be good. Give it 2 seconds. Okay, boom. It should be back to normal. Should be good. Should be good. Should be good. Give it a second. It's loading up. Yep, we should be good. We should be good. We should be better. Okay, the Wi-Fi will get better in a second. Boom, we're good. Okay, so back to normal. We'll start talking in about a couple minutes. I just want to explain what we're doing here, and then we'll get into it. I noticed today, I love streaming and I love talking to the audience. And obviously, you know, in the morning opens, I've been doing that for, I think, more than a year now. And that's really fun. We're getting about 500 people every morning, which is awesome. I'm so grateful for that. It's super cool. We will do word of the day here, just like we do word of the day on the market open, for those that missed the word of the day on the market open. And I just love it, bro. I enjoy it. And so with Finance Junkies, it's awesome. But at the end of the day on Finance Junkies, I'm not the main character, quite frankly. I mean, I'm just facilitating the discussion, because if I didn't facilitate discussion, those knuckleheads would not be able to have a reasonable conversation. You can let them know I said that within an hour, right? So someone's got to be the guy setting it up. But I love talking to the camera. I just love it. And I was watching this comedian clip today on TikTok, and I was thinking of myself, yo, didn't I always want to be a comedian? And I'm like, look, I'm not in front of, 1,000 people at a comedy club, but for 62 people here, I can make some jokes. If I can make you guys laugh, that's my high. Like, I get off on that. Like, as a creative, you kind of need that. And so hopefully as we keep doing this every day, I remember at one point we had like 540 people on this stream alone, and I was just talking, and I love that shit, bro. It's just fun. It's like, so one of my friends texted me the other day, who's watching the market open, and not to be egotistic or anything, but he said, yo, your market open sounds like a symphony. It's like the way you transition from topic to topic. It's like, it's kind of seamless. And that was probably a good market open, because honestly, some of these market opens are not the best. I'm trying to get better at how to switch from topic to topic, but that really got me thinking. I was like, there is an art to conducting a live stream. This is why those Twitch streamers, right, that do it for like 10 hours. I mean, it's an art at the end of the day. They have to keep people's attention for 10 hours straight. Like, there's an art towards communicating your way from topic to topic and giving enough interesting tidbits and responding to the audience and like keeping that whole thing afloat. So it's very interesting to kind of be able to do that every day. And I wanted to get back to doing that every single day. And with Finance Junkies, it was just impossible to do it on this channel. So now this channel is free for me to do it every single day. Last thing I'm going to say, and then we'll get into the Palantir news, is I watched an interview with Stephen A. Smith, if you guys know him from ESPN, and he is one of the most influential guys in the world. He's been doing a talk show every day for like 200 days a year for the past like 20 years. And you got to show up every day. And that's one of the things that was reinforced. I was watching that interview, and I think I've been showing up every day, for a good year and a half, almost 2 years now. But like, if the professional journalists, media reporter guys, whatever, can show up every single day, you got to show up every day. It is the golden statute of trying to even have a chance in this game. And I frankly love showing up every day. I just haven't been able to because of the finance chunky stuff. So now that that's on a new channel, we're here every day, and we're going to get this ball rolling out. I'm also going to do chapters in this because I know people appreciate it afterwards. So let me make sure I'm constantly doing the chapters, and then we'll get started into a bunch of stuff. Okay, cool. A couple comments, then we'll start. Let's go. Palantir finishes the year at 25. You heard it here first, boys and girls. That's a hell of a prediction. $25 is a good $62.5 billion market cap. So I don't know if we get there this year. I was looking at their financials last night because I'm such a freaking nerd. I was just like, I was trying to make sense of that stuff because I saw that Google event and I was like, oh, this Google event's kind of interesting. So a lot to talk about. We'll get into all that stuff, but let's see, if we can potentially get there. Daniel, hi, Amit. Any thoughts on C3 ER tomorrow or general thoughts on the company? So let's start that first timestamp. Daniel, what's interesting? I actually forgot C3 is going tomorrow. Well, let's talk about them for a second. I might be live streaming the earnings tomorrow. Probably will. It just depends on what time I have to get home because I have to go to some meeting and then I'll be back home around that time. My general thoughts around the company is that the CEO gives me incredibly weird scam vibes. For those that haven't seen my Theranos C3 AI video, I recommend you type in Theranos C3 AI Amit. CNBC did an investigation of them. The CEO basically said we have 12,000 people selling our product, a 12,000 person sales force. They did not have 12,000 people. They had barely 60. And in numerous earnings calls through 2021, he said we have a partnership with Baker Hughes that has 12,000 people selling C3 AI. That was bullshit. That's not happening. And so because that's not happening and he had to rework his statements, some investors are actually suing C3 AI for false advertising of the stock because, if you have 12,000 people selling your shit, I'm more likely to buy your stock than if you have 50 people buying your shit. They reduced guidance a lot lower last quarter. They sounded interesting on the earnings call. Now, where C3 has a competition is, or a competitive advantage or a moat, is this idea around consumption-based AI usage. Even Palantir has this whole pay-as-you-go model, but it's not as relevant as what C3 AI has and how they're able to penetrate different enterprises in terms of how companies are able to kind of pay as they go and use it based on a consumption model versus buying a thick contract. And so I think C3 AI has that as their competitive advantage. Obviously, Thomas Siebel, one of legendary CEOs, you could have whatever thoughts you have about him, but he is running the ship. I just don't like their guidance. I don't like their overall go-to-market strategy, and I don't like how they talk to investors. So I would never buy the stock. On top of that, if we just open up their stock price real quick, their ticker is up, and I think it's actually down significantly since the highs of 40, but it's up year to date. Where is it at? 183%. That's more than Palantir, and that's inching towards NVIDIA levels simply because of AI in the ticker symbol. Remember, this was an $11 stock. It's at $31. If you go to any Wall Street Bets community, all of these guys love this shit because of AI is in the name, right? And that's why they get excited about it. So I personally feel the AI is not a bubble, but I feel like there are some bubble stocks in this world, and maybe that bubble never pops, to be honest. But if it does, or if it gets kind of icky after the ARM IPO and investors sell things off, I don't think C3 is necessarily surviving. And I don't think Palantir also survives at some of the multiples it's getting right now either. So there's a lot of room for things to come down. The question becomes, where do you buy the dip? And I don't think it's C3 AI. That's not the company based on the research I've done to be able to assume that. So those are my thoughts on C3 AI, and we'll see kind of where it goes from there on the earnings. I will definitely live stream them there. Ladies and gentlemen, we got the 0-calorie Gatorade Blue. Of course, this will be a staple for these Palantir streams. We'll have to take a sip here and there, and you will have to deal with some awkward silence. Hopefully you are thinking about the nature of your existence as I'm sipping on that Gatorade, so I have some energy to be able to speak about the next thing. But that is going to be a staple in the live streams. Okay, let me take a sip, and then we're moving on to the Titan contract. See, it's definitely an awkward silence, right? But I need a soundboard. I need something to press when it's fucking silent. Let me get there. All right, here we go. So if you guys caught the video I did today, that's great. If you didn't catch the video, you can tell me you hate me right now. That's totally fine. You have a bell. I can't ring the bell when I'm drinking the Gatorade. That's not, unless you guys like that, but that would be, I don't know if everyone wants to hear it every time. So the award for the Army's Next Generation Intelligence Ground Station expected by year end. There were a lot of people commenting on the video I did on this today that they didn't even remember about the Titan contract. Quite frankly, neither did I. I forgot there was a massive Titan contract coming up that was going to be important for C3 AI. And or not C3 AI, for Palantir. This contract is essentially the Army modernizing the way they do intelligence targeting and the way they operate on the battlefield. They gave Raytheon and Palantir $36 million, so they spent $72 million in June 2022 to build out prototypes for this product. It's a very sophisticated and advanced product for them to be able to dish out $72 million just on prototypes. I mean, there's going to be a lot more money in the future, but they were like, hey, each of you get $36 million just to try to build us something like this. And if it fails, we're out of $36 million. It's not like they're going to pay it back. So we hope that you take this $36 million and we're giving it to you guys because we think you guys are the ones to be able to figure this thing out. Titan is considered a critical modernization component for the Army's multi-domain operations because it will integrate various types of data from numerous platforms to help commanders make sense of an increasingly dynamic and complex battlefield. The Army has described the system as the next generation intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. I definitely said that word wrong. Sorry. Ground station that will process sensor data from space and aerial and terrestrial systems using state-of-the-art machine learning and artificial intelligence technology, blah, 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 blah. It means ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching if you get the contract. Okay, that's what it actually means. Now, here's what I saw today that I forgot about. The Army plans to spend $1.5 billion on the procurement of this system over the next 5 years. So if Palantir were to get this contract, we're talking 1.5 billion, no genes. The kid actually is your son. Know what I'm talking about? If they get this contract, 1.5 billion. That's pretty interesting. Now, my thoughts on it is that I don't think Palantir is going to get the contract by themselves unless the product is fundamentally sophisticated and beyond what Raytheon can come up with. I think this will go to Raytheon and Palantir. I don't think this will go just to Palantir because I don't think they gave Raytheon $36 million just to have fun with it. Like I think the Army wants to be multi-vendor oriented. If they gave Raytheon $36 million and it didn't work, it would have to really epically fail for them to give all the money to Palantir, especially if we're talking about $1.5 billion. So I kind of think both companies are going to get it. Now, this is me just talking out of my ass. I have no idea like what's going to happen, but I don't think there's a world in which Palantir doesn't get it. I do think there's a world in which Palantir does get it, either exclusively or they have to share it. And if they have to share it, that's not the worst thing in the world. If, give us half of 1.5 billion, that's still, not bad. So the question becomes if they're going to be able to get it. Warren Buffett says they have unlimited money, but yeah, well, that's true. It's really us paying the 1.5 billion for the contract. It's not really the government, because the government is we the people. So all of our tax dollars will be going to pay for it, which is why buying Palantir is kind of a hedge against a tyrannical government. Because if your money gets burned from the government, if you have Palantir shares, at least it's getting burned into Palantir. And so, maybe that's a good thing. Now, why is this important? I think there's two kind of core reasons I talked about in my video today. Number one, I want to know if AIP for defense is used as a procedural element in terms of the overall software procurement. So they didn't have AIP for defense back in June of 2022. If they get this contract, and one of the competitive differentiations, one of their moats in regards to them being able to potentially win the contract over Raytheon might be attaching an LLM like AIP for defense and integrating it into the modernization of what the Titan contract is looking for. If they can give Army commanders and generals the ability to work on a day-to-day basis via a AIP chatbot for defense. We saw that AIP for defense video was insane when it came out back in April. If they're able to do that, and that's sitting on top of Titan, that might actually be a really, really sophisticated product, and it might be different enough from Raytheon to be able to get them the contract. So the question becomes if they're going to be able to get it, but I don't know, how relevant AIP for defense is going to be in the context of something like Palantir, or in the context of this Titan contract. P. Morin says Raytheon may have to make something that works for the first time for once. Yeah, like is Raytheon? This might sound like a dumb question, but is Raytheon good at making software? Because they're classified as a hardware defense company, correct? I might be wrong on this, but like I know they've procured software before. I don't know if they're like the go-to company you go to build software systems. And again, I may sound incredibly naive on this. I haven't done a deep dive into Raytheon, but if they are super big in the context of software, let's look at their stock, by the way, then maybe they'll put up a reasonable challenge. But if they do hardware, which is what I think they really do, then maybe I'm incorrect on that. Let's actually go to their stock right here. So RTX stock, let me know in the chat if anyone holds this stock, RTX. Raytheon Corporation. So over the past, since 1983, it's up. Wow, that's it, bro. Is this accurate? From 1983, it's up only 94%. I mean, they pay a dividend, so I get, wow, that's incredible. So in 1996, dot-com bubble, it got to where it is right now. Or sorry, before the dot-com bubble. 1999, it hit a high of 90.80. It fell to 45s. Then in 2008, it fell to 28. 2016, it fell. 2020, obviously, it fell from 51 in the COVID stuff from 80. Wow, so it's been stuck at this $85 range for a long time. That is very interesting. Year to date, it is down 15%. Okay, so if you've been holding Raytheon stock, you have not done that well year to date. So in general, if Raytheon is not the best procurer of software, the best creator of software, then this should be Palantir's contract to win. Now, outside of AIP defense, why is this really important? Because Morgan Stanley, which is what I call them from now on. By the way, could you believe that these like shills from Morgan Stanley decided to comment on my video last week when I said, oh, how do you guys own $18 million shares, $290 million of stock, and then you're calling it for go to $9? You fucking, we know what the fuck you're doing, okay? Let's not be stupid here. These fucking employees, former employees, whatever you want to call them, they're like, the equity division is different from the investment division. It's like, no shit, the equity division is different from the investment decision. Like, obviously, like fucking the toys in Walmart are different from the food in Walmart, but it's still Walmart, okay? And some people might think that's naive analysis. I think that's no bullshit analysis. At the end of the day, if a stock is worth $9, the equity division should be telling the parent company, hey, this stock's super overvalued. Take your gains and run. No, the parent division is buying more shares on these dips, and the equity division is spewing out all these bullshit reports, in my opinion, to get the stock to go lower. I mean, look, that's just the honest truth of it, okay? That's just the honest fucking truth. It's what has happened on Wall Street. And my skepticism is because if you just look up the amount of fines that these companies get when it comes to communications and when it comes to trading, when it comes to market making, JP Morgan got fined $920 million, almost $1 billion, September of 2020. Look it up on CNBC. Just type in JP Morgan $920 million fine for illegal trading practices. I mean, this shit is like, and they paid it that shit like it was a check. They were like, all right, here you go. Jamie Dimon signed off, move on with our day, because it was a parking ticket. So forgive me if I'm a little bit skeptical around this idea around, Morgan Stanley doing a downgrade. That is just normal. They are not allowed to communicate with each other according to the SEC. So allegedly they don't talk to each other. Yeah. I mean, allegedly it's just, it's one of those things, bro, where it's like when you really see how the world works, you're just like, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. There was a guy who DM'd me after I posted a screenshot of the comment who's worked on NASDAQ for 10 years. And he was just like, bro, trust me, you're right. He was like, there's a reason I'm on NASDAQ and we see this shit happen all day. We see the communication fines, the shit happens. So look, maybe I'm wrong. I would just say after being in the markets for 4 or 5 years and, I would have got scared of something like this report years ago. Now I'm just getting a little bit more, hopefully, smarter about what's actually going on here. I mean, look, if the stock's overvalued by 45%, sell your whole fucking shit. If you're not doing that shit, well, you kind of don't think the stock's overvalued, but you're putting out all this stuff saying that it is. A lot of the times I think of these reports as just media. They're just YouTube videos in a fucking 21-page report. That's all they are. They're trying to get people to click and just consume some content. So the Titan contract is important because this is what they say about the competition in the government space, okay? While the government segment was once praised as a cyclical part of the business, able to offset broader macro weakness, the trailing 5 quarters have increasingly raised questions about the trajectory of the business and what normalized segment growth may look like. Year to date, the trends have further increased the relevance of this debate as both U.S. and international government has started to see the impacts primarily from uncertainties around expansions and renewals, according to management. While our partner conversations suggest no material weakening in Palantir's value proposition for the government vertical, that's basically all the system integrators are talking about, like Carasoft, for example, that repackages and sells Palantir software. They're saying, look, their software is fine. There's no issue. There appears to be an increased sign of competition from incumbent public sector vendors. They give an example about Oracle and C3 AI. And a risk from emerging public sector vendors with upcoming FedRAMP authorizations like Snowflake that expects to achieve FedRAMP High and IL5 by the end of the year. While we see these as potential headwinds, in part balanced by near-term an opportunity into securing the NHS contract, we think this is likely reflected in expectations after management commented on its recent earnings call that the UK government business was particularly strong in Q2. Now, a couple of things around this. If we get this Titan contract, I think this puts a lot of concern to bed around competition in the government space. Not that it goes away, concerns about competition, but getting that Titan contract is a really big deal. I mean, there are not many companies in the world that could create the type of software that the Army is looking for in the context of Titan. So if we're able to get that deal, I think that hedges back against this. And then this argument they're making here, a risk from emerging public sector vendors with upcoming FedRAMP authorizations. This is why Palantir made the FedStart product. That FedStart product is essentially their response, I think, to increased venture capital private spending in the tunes of $34 billion last year going into these private startups for defense tech, particularly software defense tech, basically saying, hey, we can be the platform that allows you to even be able to get access to the government. So although Snowflake, is going to ramp up, and I don't know if they get IL6, but they get IL5 soon, and they're competing for some of these governmental contracts. Yes, there's competition. I do think Palantir is kind of playing a picks and shovels approach on all the emerging startup competition. And then when it comes to Snowflake versus Palantir to get some of these really intense $1.5 billion contracts like Titan, I mean, it's a joke, right? Like Palantir is going to get those deals over something like Snowflake. Snowflake doesn't make software the way Palantir makes software in regards to this stuff. This is Palantir's bread and butter. If Palantir can get those deals, it's a time to look at the thesis because it's like, what the hell is going on? But I think those will be fine. And so I think the Morgan Stanley concern from that perspective, it's not a big concern in my opinion, or wasn't an interesting concern from what I was looking at from there. Meow now says, I can imagine Palantir pulling info from satellites, ground recognition, and so on. The decisions are made in milliseconds. Yeah, and that's why that Meta Constellation product is phenomenal, right? Like that Meta Constellation product is a really, really big deal in the context of what Palantir is going to be able to do in the future and what they've already shown they can do. So I think that's an important thing to think about as well. When is the next Fed CPI? Next Fed CPI is September 13th. So 8 days from now. 8 days, that CPI is going to determine a lot. That shit needs to come in below 3.2. It's probably not, but if it does, that's going to be a very good thing for us next Wednesday. Yeah, I might live stream that one in the morning because that one's a big one. Guys, I don't know about you. I slept on my neck yesterday, and oh my God, today, like my neck has been in so much pain. I don't know. I'm going to be 26 in a month. Maybe this is what happens when you get older. Your neck, I just slept the wrong way. And like, it's like throbbing. It's literally throbbing. And so hopefully Palantir can come up with some Foundry software to solve it. Or they need to incorporate AIP for drug discovery and have enough drugs to solve all this neck pain that's going on. Dude, wait till you get to your 30s, bro. 4 more years. It's coming. It's coming. 4 more years. Over the hill at 26. You should sleep on a pillow, not on your neck. See, that would be smart if you had told me that yesterday. But I slept on my neck, and that was the problem. So hopefully we fix that. Okay. What's the next topic? Okay, so here's what I was going to ask you about. We have about 20 minutes left. Do you guys want to watch the new Karp interview together? That's how we could end this. I could pause here and there and kind of comment on my thoughts. But Karp had a new interview today. It's a 20-minute interview. Not even an interview. It's like a lecture he did. Arnie found the video and he posted it. So if no one's seen it, we could all watch it together for the last 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes and 46 seconds. I saw like 10 minutes of it. I think there's some nice gems in here. Do you guys want to watch it? Let me know in the chat. Do you guys want to watch it? So you get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You get to watch me react to it. If you haven't seen it yet, you're going to watch it. Like, you got to listen to Daddy Karp. He hasn't talked in like 4 months. We need to listen to Karp. And so I want to see if you guys want to see it. Blake, you watch. I think a lot of you haven't seen it. If a lot of you haven't seen it yet, that's also a good way to end the stream. Better enjoy those 30s. 45 is coming hard. Bro, if 26 is my neck hurting, then fuck, 36 is going to be 46. 76. That shit's going to be crazy. It's going to happen. You guys want to watch it? I'm going to be commenting on it, though. I'm going to be commenting. So you're going to have to deal with some of my comments. But all right, here we go. Shout out to Arnie. He just hit 10,000 followers on Twitter. Congrats to Arnie, 10,000 followers on X. My X is in the description. Yo, this X thing is stupid, bro. My X is not in the description. I don't even think my X knows I do YouTube. In fact, my X, quite frankly, she was a communist. And I wanted to acquire capital. So I guess I didn't pass the marks on her test to be able to be a good boyfriend. I told you guys I wanted to be a comedian, and 148 of you had to sit through that. I'm going to test these jokes on you guys. You guys better have got that joke. I'm not going to explain it because I feel like I don't need to explain it, but I hope you guys got that joke. All right, here we go. Palantir CEO, shout out to Arnie for getting those 10,000 followers on X. Here we go. He posted this video. We are going to get into it. This is Karp talking at the Tallinn Digital Summit 2023. And this is what he has to say. Karl Marx. Okay, some of you guys got it. I was afraid. It's like, was that joke a little too? No, you guys got it. ET, I know I can count on you. ET, I know you got it. All right, here we go. Let's listen up.
You need accurate information. I could give you accurate information, but you might have trouble believing me because I'm also selling a product. So don't believe me. You have and find the best person you can find is the smartest person who's worked at a company that's world class in this area. There's a famous meme in America I think it's wrong. It's like you win by failing and failing and failing until you win. But in reality, you learn by being in an organization that's had major setbacks and then wins. And there's subtle difference. You don't.
Now, when I heard this on the car today, as I was coming back from Dunkin' Donuts with my caramel iced latte, this was very interesting to me, okay? This idea that America is built on this culture of like you fail and you are forgiven for failure because we want you to try, because for every failed, trillion startups there are, you get the Google, Amazon, but in Europe, they don't encourage that failure, right? In India, they don't encourage that failure. Karp is taking a different approach. Karp is saying it's not about failing. It's more so about going through so many setbacks and finding a way to succeed in the face of all those setbacks as a larger organization. That's where you really learn something. He's talking less from a startup founder, more from the context of a seasoned executive with his journey at Palantir. Obviously, failed basically for 10 years until they figured something out. And then they finally got a product off the ground and they kept going from there. So his experience is a lot more different than just a startup founder that has failed many times. I mean, this was Karp's first business and it worked. It just took so fucking long to get it to work.
Really want to call the person who's had 50 failures. You want to call the person who's had a company or an organization that has had major setbacks and in the end won.
You were one of the first CEOs to go down to Kiev last year and offer your support. So how has the AI actually impacted the battlefield, in your opinion?
Well, there's the official version of AI in the broader space, which was really large language models convincing people that technology was relevant, that it could help them with homework and poetry, and they could rap like a rapper, except for they're not a rapper. But the real beginning of the AI revolution really started a number of years ago. Using it's kind of obvious, but when people say AI, what they really mean are currently mostly they mean large language models, but there are large scale algorithmic utilities of software which are AI, and they have the advantage of being precise. Large language models have the advantage of being able to gather information from all over the world, but are not precise. What happened on the battlefield was that you saw a small power with negligible investment in hardware doing much better than it should based on technical acuity and instruments. And the interesting thing about technology is, by and large, technology doesn't lead to societal change until there's a galvanizing moment where people really believe it can make a difference, meaning life or death, or your business goes out of business. And I before the war, there was certainly a sense we have a global business, so in every market we're in, that software AI was kind of a luxury product. If you were geeky or unpopular, you would kind of, get involved in it. But otherwise, you could kind of just not invest in it. And I think that's, luckily for the West, that was the approach of our adversaries. On top of that, what happens in these countries is where things look like they're fraudulent, like their view of technology, probably the fraudsters grifted on it and took all the money and put it in their bank account. So it really led to a very surprising moment. And then that combined with large language models coming on the scene has basically changed the world. A world where hardware dominant industry with very light software, which light is being a euphemism for maybe basically non-existent, were the dominant players in the world. This had some huge advantages for the Western Alliance because, in general,
what he's saying here is really important. And Nate, shout out to you. Thank you for being here. He's making the argument he's made many times, which is the West is the best at making software, which is why they win. What he's speaking to right here is all the countries in NATO, right? He's basically saying, look, I don't know every single country in NATO, so I don't want to name all the countries and get it wrong. But he's saying to the countries that believe in Western democracy, freedom, all that stuff, if you believe in this shit and we're the best at software, and we actually have the software advantage, which is why he's talking about why he was the first public CEO to go down to Kyiv against the authoritarian regimes like Russia and China, why the hell are you not buying this shit? That's basically the undertone of what Karp's messaging here is here. He's like, if the West is the best at software, you guys believe in Western values, democratic liberalism, buy the software. It's like 2% of your budget, if that, for defense spend, and make sure you're secure. He's saying that in a very, nonchalant way, but that's kind of the intellectual way that he's trying to come off here.
Europe is a dominant player in hardware, and America is a dominant player in software, with exceptions. There are phenomenal software companies outside of America, and there are phenomenal hardware companies inside of America. But if you had to generalize, that would be the generalization. And what has happened now is and then inside of America, you have the problem that most of the software companies that are relevant are really West Coast based. And we moved to Colorado, which is also on the West Coast. But this moving from this is a joke when we started 20 years ago and we were building products for intel agencies, really everyone outside the intel agencies thought that these products were non-relevant, basically maybe useful for a narrow use case, but wouldn't change the world, despite the fact they did. I mean, I think Europe would be very different if the terror attacks that have been stopped by many people in this room, in many cases using our product, you would have a different populist landscape. But in any case, it's now center on everyone's mind, and how to negotiate this, especially in the war context, is arguably the most important thing we can all think about.
So my Ukrainian colleagues told me at Cyber Commanders Forum that war changes everything. So it means that we have the privilege and time to kind of make those changes in advance. So what's your kind of take on how do you see that AI will change the relative kind of power of different countries?
Okay, this part is really interesting because now he starts talking into kind of the acceleration or adoption of LLMs and what it means, and ultimately how it implicates all these countries that are trying to use it for defense.
Well, there's different forms of AI. So internal surveillance, we should avoid, and we should use AI and software to limit the scope and intrusive nature of internal surveillance on our citizens. In fact, you have to fight weapons with weapons. So people who understand how surveillance actually works, technical actors with legislative interests have to write the legislation to guarantee us the maximum amount of freedom we in the West. And that freedom includes the right to be forgotten, the right to request to be forgotten. I tend to be, there's many different ways of looking at civil liberties. I still am probably mostly, in Europe, you're focused on consumer and government. I'm much more concerned about what the government sees and how they use it. Can it be used in surveillance? Under what conditions? Can it be used to prosecute? Can it be used to defame you? So limiting the scope of that is also a technical endeavor and has to be done by people who actually understand this and who are non-politicized, which is a problem. We had a vibrant civil liberties community in America. That still exists, but it's often, Republicans are bad, Democrats are good. I'm more on the Democratic side, and but you need nonpartisan people to do this.
Karp is a socialist.
And then you have an issue, which is that if you just look at it from the American perspective, the West Coast is the dominant player almost every almost not all providers of this technology come from the West Coast. So even in America, you have to negotiate. A number of people asking for governance, which I support, are actually just interested in not buying the best product. You have in Europe, Europe is has regulation. Europe is obviously, you have big countries and large countries. I do think that there's a somewhat of a division of interest there, because it is maximally in the interest of Europe to both foster its industry and make it possible for companies to export their software. But it's absolutely imperative for the small countries. And it's a massive advantage for the small countries, because you don't need, with the correct implementation of software, you can outmaneuver the large countries on the battlefield or on the economic field. And here, this country has just a huge advantage, as do countries in this region, because there's the legislation, but then to quote Durkheim on contractual thing is there's the preconditions of the contract. So you can have the legislation, but do people really still buy the best product, or do they buy the local product? I'm here to tell you, if you buy the product that's not the best, you will lose. So, and then.
All right. Now, as much as I agree with that, he's got to be right on that. Like, he's telling all these people at this conference, look, if you buy the shit that's 50% off, but they claim they can do whatever we can do, you're going to lose. He's right on that. These guys just have to believe it. If they believe it, we're going to sell a shit ton of software to NATO. If they don't believe it, if they think they can take a cheap shortcut and, get Foundry or Gotham in some cheaper way, it's going to suck. It's going to be like a company that has better sales just beats you on product. So, if these people really believe it, which is why he has to be so philosophical, we're going to sell more software.
And you have the question, well, how do you identify the real product? And I can tell you exactly what I tell people in America. There are the leaders of this field, you must be in contact with them. The good news for Europe is a lot of the leaders in that field are European. The bad news is many of them are living in America. So you must talk to them. Talking to your local provider, whether that's your local provider in DC who's never heard of a large language model, or it's your local provider, that's necessary, but it's, to use an overused term, it's not sufficient, because unlike the revolutions of the past, the difference between the person and the person who's best is the difference between winning and losing a war. And this is just a massive shift. And the people who understand this will outperform. The people who ignore this are going to do very poorly. America does have a huge advantage. We have a lot of political craziness. You may not be aware of it. But de facto, the GDP of America is going to increase. It already has increased vis-a-vis Europe quite a bit, which is a cause for concern, because it's easier and the adoption is much, much quicker, especially in industry, in the military context also. And then there's a question of how do we know? Then vis-a-vis our adversaries, look, China, which I think is, and that's something that Europeans have to pay attention to. America has shifted from a country where I think I'm the only reasonably prominent person I know that has an educational background in Europe. And this would have been different 50 years ago, 30 years ago. That does not exist. America does not have the emotional connection to Europe it once had. And so that's another reason I think small countries are particularly important, because you have to go to America and explain what's going on. It's not the case anymore that Americans are as focused on what's happening here as emotionally, and that will affect the politics over time.
And that's also because Americans are so divided within, the United States that it's hard for us to focus on some of the stuff that's going on in Europe. I'm trying to change that every day. I'm trying to read more global news headlines and get a better understanding of it. But also with Europe passing these ridiculous regulations, from my perspective, on like Facebook and Google, that they can't, they have to pay the news publishers. You're going to get a lot of American companies saying, fuck you guys. Like, at the end of the day, we're going to do what we need to do. And we're going to just like not give you distribution on your news. And so a lot of those values are coming into clash right now. Apple with the whole Lightning port that they need. There's a lot of stuff that Europe's forcing on American companies, and it will be a massive shift in the next decade.
But America is very focused on China. And then the question is, what are Russia and China doing? they're behind, but we have to be very focused in America because they won't stay behind very long, simply because while we have the better technology players, they have leadership that's very friendly, that navigates engineering structures arguably as well or better than we do. I would say, especially in the case of China, that there's a huge, it's very hard for humanities people and engineers to actually communicate. And that's something all Western societies struggle with. And that gives, say, China an advantage because that's not an issue that they have as much. On the other hand, they focus most of their efforts on internal surveillance and the actual selection technologies, which are a hybrid of LLMs and algorithms, are being produced in the West.
So some of the people who are advocating that we should pause the development of AI, what's your kind of take on
it's very easy to talk in absolute terms. We live on the battlefield in relative terms, meaning in absolute terms, of course, typically you have two camps, those that say it's dangerous and those that say it's safe. I'm in a arguably different camp. I think these technologies are potentially dangerous, and the dangers are obvious. Even if you don't get to general AI, where the AI takes over, there are real surveillance dangers that we should all be afraid of and working against. You should have the right to have a personal life, your health, your private affairs. These things should not be things that the government has easy, or arguably companies have access to, or in an unregulated way. But I think the debate is very academic, because the basis of our civilization, I believe, is that the West imposed technological superiority, and through that technological superiority, garnered the rule of law, human rights. The flaw in the logic, at least in the, I would say, Western context, is many people believe that the rule of law and human rights are ipso facto, in an automatic way, something that appears, and we internalize them because they are a superior way to live.
What Karp is saying here is that these ideas around freedom, democracy, all this stuff, he's saying they're like the law of the land, and they're just better than everything else, therefore everyone embraces them. When in reality, you have to fight for those values to matter, not just because they're a given. They're only a given because, we think we take them for granted.
I believe they are a superior way to live, but I believe that they were adopted because people saw that the people who build the best rockets, the best bombs, the best cars, the build safety devices, also believed in this ethical framework. And therefore, people equated the ethical framework with technological innovation and growth. If you believe that, and those are a series of assumptions that most people I know do not believe, the logical consequence is that these technologies are dangerous, but we have to be ahead, because otherwise our adversaries will be ahead. And the framework that they want to live in is not a rule of law, not a human rights. For all the problems we have in the West, there are no other places where you can experience as little discrimination, as little bias, as little unfairness as Western countries. So I'm not saying we're perfect, but I do think we're the best imperfect societies that have ever existed.
And he's correct about that. We're not perfect in the West, but we're better than every alternative. And so he's trying to sell his software to all these countries that believe in these values to defend themselves with those values. There's a really good comment in the chat real quick. NHS deal won't move the stock much, but it'll be a door opener for long-term revenue. Remember that the NHS deal doesn't include AIP, for example. Palantir can upsell AIP. I agreed. And long-term, if we're managing the entire country's healthcare system, we are going to get more deals after that in the rest of Europe. Just a question of if we can lock down the NHS.
And this is why, not to go offline, I think the fundamental erosions of the West are where people inside Western countries or outside Western countries believe we're not delivering on innovation and things that help economies grow, and therefore adopt what I would view as more regressive policies and views. and vote for those people. So I think the progressive, classically defined approach requires heavy investment in these technologies, especially in the military context, and coalitions of partners, both partners and translators. And I would say, if we're being optimistic, I've been saying this for 20 years and mostly got yelled at. Now I only get yelled at every 2 days, not every day. So I think people are moving towards this, not because of the persuasiveness of my arguments, but because of the persuasiveness of the actions of our adversaries, which always exploit weakness. So, and there's we have a raging debate in America about all these issues. And my only simple point is, you can be right on all the issues, but if you miss the point that our adversaries will always and ruthlessly exploit internal and external weakness, you've won every point, but you've lost the argument.
So you've had over 20 years of experience actually implementing those solutions. So what's the role of Palantir, and what's the advice to our distinguished guests here? So kind of how do you employ or kind of introduce effective AI solutions and mitigate the risk?
Call your children, ask them who the smartest tech person is, and get them to work for you. I can make look, I think our products are unique. We've proven they're unique. We're a successful company. You need accurate information. I could give you accurate information, but you might have trouble believing me because I'm also selling a product. So don't believe me. You have, and find the best person you can find is the smartest person who's worked at a company that's world-class in this area. There's a famous meme in America I think it's wrong. It's like you win by failing and failing and failing until you win. But in reality, you learn by being in an organization that's had major setbacks and then wins. And there's subtle difference. You don't really want to call the person who's had 50 failures. You want to call the person who's had a company or an organization that has had major setbacks and in the end won. And that you want to identify people who've been at those companies who you trust, so from your country, and you want to put them very close to you and ask them who's real, who's not. Because otherwise you're going to get a lot of conflicting interests, and you're going to make the wrong decision about who to work with, what products to buy, what products to implement, who to avoid. So I know this is not, I know your jobs are to talk to everybody, and you do a great job of that. I'm here to tell you, identify a couple people and talk to them regularly. And then you have to have a business or military specific use case with a very tight timeline. And one of the advantages small countries have, and a relatively small budget. One of the dangers we have in big countries around this is in the end, you will need sums that are real. But in the beginning, you need to identify the players that are real and have enough money just to get them going and to actually test what's working. You need to be personally involved. One of the mistakes we have, I'm running out of time, but now we have it all over large organizations, not governments, but any large organization they're built for a hardware world. In the hardware world, you had the CEO and the tech person, and they didn't like each other. They avoided each other as much as possible. And then, but honestly, probably tried to get each other fired the whole time. And then you see who wins, and the only winner are the lousy results. The software world presupposes the person in charge gets involved in the tech issues. You don't have to be technical, but you have to understand what is the business, what is the military outcome we want, what is the timeline. Cut that timeline in half, because if the people are actually delivering a product, they're actually implementing, they need 10% of the time that they say they do. And flatten your hierarchy. Now, this isn't possible across a large organization tomorrow, but you can pick a subset of organization and start with accurate ingredients, who's good, who's not, flatten the hierarchy, define the business use case, cut the business time in it by at least 2, offer that a small amount of money with a larger amount if it's successful, and run, don't walk. And you can have a world-class software-empowered organization. If you violate any of those steps, you will invariably spend a lot of money. And the first way you will know you've gone wrong is you will hear from the person, oh, this is going to work out, but we need twice as much time and 4 times as much money. That's when you pull the plug.
Interesting words by Palantir CEO Alex Karp. That was the finishing of his latest keynote. I thought it was good. I don't think it was his best performance. I think he could have had more moments of being a little bit more just like easier to understand. There are some times when Karp just rambles a little bit here and there, and I love his philosophical stuff. But here it wasn't even philosophical rambling. Here it was just kind of like ideas that were kind of fighting in different places while he was talking. And so it didn't come out as eloquently or like streamlined as I thought it could have. But not a bad talk at the end of the day. Look, the last point he's making, I hope he, and I know he has, I'd imagine, he made that point to the NHS many times, right? The stuff he says at the end, which is that if you try to cheap your way out of this, shortcut your way out of this, or hire companies that are going to take way longer than they should be taking, as he says, you know, if you hire the right company, they should be taking 10% of the time that is allocated to them to be able to actually come up with a working MVP, prototype, etc., get to motion, then you're going to end up having a shit ton of crappy software that's not going to get the job done. And I believe that is the message that Palantir has told Rishi Sunak in the NHS for the past 2 years. And I think the NHS is taking that very seriously. I'll do on one of these streams later this week, we'll probably do an update on the NHS and all the information I'm gathering there. But we should know by the end of this month if we get this deal or not. And if we don't get this deal, it's going to suck. Not for the stock or whatever, but it's going to suck just because either Palantir didn't have the tech to be able to get this deal, or the politics internally within the UK stop people from getting this deal. I did a clip on this on Sunday from the podcast I posted on the weekly, and a lot of people from the UK commented, and they were like, bro, none of us care about this data privacy thing. Like, I know you Americans think we all care about, like, we don't care at all. Like, we just want something that makes the NHS better. It's not that we're oblivious to it. It's just we don't care who's processing the data. We just want the thing to work. And so I would imagine that Palantir gets this NHS deal, man. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of years, and it's a lot of reputation that's being added to them for them to get this type of a deal, to manage this type of a project. It's one of those contracts where it's like, it's one of those things you just want to get done. You know, you ever been in school and you want to get a good grade on a test? It's like, man, I just really hope I get a good grade on this test. Like, I need to get a good grade on this test if my grades haven't been so good. It's like, they don't need it per se. It doesn't break the thesis or anything. It's just going to be super annoying as a shareholder if we don't get this deal. So my default assumption is that we might not get the entire deal. We're going to get like half of it or a quarter, whatever it is. I still don't believe we're getting the whole thing, to be honest, because I feel like that's a dream scenario. Maybe we get chunks of it. But if we get the whole thing, that'd be amazing. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, I mean, I think his entire talk was based on this thesis that if you're going to procure software and you're going to do it for any type of governmental reason, whether that's healthcare or defense, you need to procure software in the right way. Now, there's a large debate around Google's Vertex and Do It in the context of Palantir's AIP. I am still researching this and trying to learn and understand this stuff, so I don't have an opinion fully formed yet. I don't think Google is going after these NHS types of contracts, right? Not only don't they want the political backlash from it, but they're making so much damn money on ads that I don't think they care enough about it. So it's a healthy debate around Google versus Palantir and ChatGPT for Enterprise, and I have to do a lot more research before I can give a ton of conclusive analysis. But ultimately these deals and the people that Karp's talking to that were at this conference, these either heads of state or executives that work within the defense departments of these states, I don't think they're going to Google or Microsoft for defense software. They're looking at Palantir. And if they're looking at Palantir, it's just a question of like, should we get it or should we not? I mean, just imagine 20 countries wake up tomorrow or in the next 2 years and like, we need Palantir software. What does that mean on the governmental side? What does that mean in terms of the CAGR? What does that mean in terms of the revenue multiples? What does that mean in terms of the overall influence we're having across the world? Do you think in the next 5 years, Palantir will have more influence or less influence from a governmental side? I mean, if the answer is more, the question becomes, what does the revenue multiple look like? And if the revenue multiple is decent enough because of all that influence, just like I was saying on the Titan contract, 30 minutes ago, the 1.5 billion over the next 5 years to be able to get that for Palantir, like that, it's a big deal. And it means that we will get more deals in the future, that government business will grow. It'll be healthy, as Philip Rizzo says, gradually, then suddenly. But we got to be able to see if we can get that. And if we can get that, that's very important. Julio, Amit with the exclamation point. Julio, thank you for being here. Joshua says, Google will be used by small and medium-sized businesses, much bigger TAM for Google Workspace with AI. Maybe. And maybe Palantir doesn't need to get those businesses, right? I think a lot is unproven in the world of AI. There's a lot to be able to see what's going on in the future. And we will ultimately see. Next quarter, I think Palantir is expecting $553 to $557 million of revenue. I think they will get to the high side of 557. I think they're going to be GAAP profitable. Customer count is the only thing I care about next quarter. Grow it above 8% and keep the ball moving. I already kind of scratched off this year as like, look, the stock went up 200% this year. I know it's at like 150 right now, whatever. I don't care anymore about this year. Now I care about get the customers, get the AIP growth, get this damn NHS contract, potentially get this Titan contract, get into the S&P 500, and let's talk about what's going to happen over the next couple of years after that. So if we can do that, I think look, we only have 4 months left of the year. 4 months left. I'm wearing this fucking Hawaiian shirt like it's summer. It's fall now. It's autumn. We're getting into autumn. I know we still got 16 days, but 4 months left of the year. And after these 4 months, we move on and we keep going from there. And so let's try to end these 4 months strong and see if we can. Hey, look, if we stay at 15 by the end of these 4 months, that's a win. It was 6 at one point this year, or 740 or whatever. So it's a win. It's a very big win. Let's just see if we can get there. And maybe if CPI comes in lower, S&P does what it can do, then we can get a little higher. But we'll see where it goes from there. Going to be interesting to see how it all plays out on the commercial side, in my opinion. I agree. That's going to be one of the most interesting parts of this entire thing. Anyone else remember Palantir for Builders? It's a Foundry for Builders. It's not medium enterprise. It's just like not even startups, like smaller than startup companies, right? Really small companies that are just getting started in the world. All right. That is it for me. How is Audio coming along? Literally just had a meeting right before getting through. It's going good. I have my update coming out in a couple of days. We're making some progress. Algorithm's getting a lot better. In my update, you'll see a lot more stuff there. I was thinking of posting my update publicly as well, to be honest, because like I posted to the investors. People were asking one day. I was like, I'll post it public. I don't really care. So probably we'll have that out soon, and we'll keep things running and going along. Tomorrow, I want to talk a little bit more about Cathie Wood and some of the reasons that she's been buying Palantir and kind of some of the logic for why she's been buying Palantir. I want to talk a little bit more about this Morgan Stanley report. I touched on it a little bit around their government stuff, but I want to get deeper into their numbers tomorrow and talk more about what they're saying. And I want to do some comparisons between the government deal from Morgan Stanley's analysis versus what Mariana at Bank of America thinks, and why there's such a contrast between why they think what they think. And then after that, there's a couple of new articles that came out today from Foxglove, the organization that's trying to get Palantir to not get the NHS deal. I want to discuss that stuff as well, and we'll keep going from there. All right. That's it for me. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Palantir live streams every day. I know we started late at 9:20. I think 9:15-ish. You should expect it every day. Clear out your schedule. 9:15 p.m. every day. Get some popcorn, get some Oreos, get some blue calorie Gatorade, and we will be here every single day. And the reason we're starting is because Finance Junkies has moved to its own channel, so this channel is free for streaming every night. I fucking love streaming. I love talking. This is the most fun thing in the world. Thank you 159 people for being here. It means the absolute world to me. I do not take it for granted. It is a privilege to be able to speak for you guys and hopefully give you some value. I'll see you if you haven't had a chance to make it tomorrow, 9:20 a.m. market open stream. See you guys then. Bye, everybody.